G'day guys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all having a good time. Today a bit of a comparison against two four-wheel drives. No serious off-road stuff today with them. We're just going to take them for a bit of a drive and just compare how far the technology's come in these two vehicles. 2021 Mahindra, 1979 HJ45 Cruiser. Big fat tyres on him, leaf springs all the way around. These things you could do up relatively cheap and easy. We built this one pretty off from ground up. You'll see it on the channel. Jump on, have a look, and you'll see the full build of him and how easy it was to get to this stage for an old cruiser. It really is a bloody weapon, this whole thing. Absolutely love it. And the interiors on them were pretty basic. Big steering wheel, because of the no power steering, you need to swing on the bloody thing. Basic dash on them. Yeah, we've added a few more switches and gauges, and we've added the console up the top. And but yeah, really basic interior in them. No creature comforts like the Mahindra, but you can jump in there full of mud all over your feet and everything else, and you don't really care. So it's a great old machine. Mahindra, on the other hand, is a lot more refined, a lot more comfortable, a lot more creature comforts in it and everything else. Bluetooth, sat nav, rain sensing wipers. It's, you know, it's got all the modern stuff in Apple CarPlay, electric windows, massive interior in the back of them here. Lots of headroom, comfortable. Drive it along at 100k an hour, and that's the biggest difference in these two. You can drive this, you're doing 100k an hour, you can't hear yourself think, and they get bloody hot and everything else to drive long distances. This thing here I can drive a fair distance to work comfortably, and you don't turn up there feeling stuffed and worn out from steering something like this all the way up there. Great machine to drive, fun to drive. Jump out of it laughing like a schoolgirl all the time. It's a good bit of fun, that thing. And so is this thing to a point, but this thing here is a hell of a lot more comfortable for off-road. It's not too bad. It's, you know, it's very well sprung now with the pedal suspension that we put in it. Handles the off-road stuff really well. Big thick chassis in them compared to these old things. These things used to break chassis all the time down through the guts here, but yep, horses for courses. And back in the day, these were the thing to have. They were a bloody great ute. These are the modern equivalent to what they are. They're not a 79 series cruiser, weren't ever meant to be a 79 series cruiser, which I get told a lot. And 1000k to the tank at them. Just a beautiful little ute. And but we'll take them for a bit of a drive and see how they compare to each other. Instantly, you notice a hell of a lot harder to steer compared to the little Mahindra. It has no power steering, no air conditioning. It's bloody hot in here, and no acceleration hardly, and it is very, very loud. find a charm with this old thing. You're willing it to do more, but really they won't. It's just how they are. Just a good love that noise. Just a good, honest old workhorse. One thing you definitely notice with driving these old cruisers, how much they vibrate and shake around inside compared to the modern day refined four-wheel drives. But having said that, these things, they can take a fair bit of bloody punishment, especially off-road. And sure, they won't pull as much as the others, and they haven't got anywhere near as much power of the others. They definitely do the job that they need to do. Let's just say that. These things used to, and they still do in some parts of Australia. A lot of farmers have them. A lot of cow cockies, and then you get the newer cruisers. And that one there's not even done up. She's stock as a rock, that old girl. And, which is very strange for a brand new cruiser. But I like these old things. Yeah, they're loud, yeah, they're harsh. They're hot, they're bloody hot. There's no power steering, there's no creature comforts in them. The only thing we've ever done to this is all the newer stereo and stuff in it for the young fella. But well done, Olga. They're just a good old honest ute, and that's the comparison I'm trying to make between these things and a Mahindra. Yeah, sure, they're not a 79 series cruiser, but they don't pretend to be those Mahindras. They're just a bloody good little farm ute that you can do up, a bit like these old girls were when they first come to Australia. You know, they run around a lot of cattle properties, and you can do them up relatively cheaply, and that's what the Mahindra is. It's soft in there. First thing you notice about these Mahindras, they've done a fair bit of work on the interior to keep them nice and quiet. Now we can rattle down a dirt road here. It's been washed out last night, there's a good old storm. You know, we're doing 80k an hour and it's nice and quiet. There could be a herd of elephants outside tap dancing on the bonnet and you won't hear them because it's refined pretty well. They've done a lot of work with the sound deadening and the build quality inside this cab, and even bouncing over some of this rougher stuff. You don't hear too many bangs and rattles carrying on and annoying the bejesus out of you. It's just a good quiet little ride, and you got all the mod cons: aircon, power steering, cruise control, Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, all the other stuff in it. So much difference compared to an older Landcruiser. Does it make it for a better drive? If you're going long distance, definitely. You know, I can drive this to work, you know, about 450 odd K to work, stinking hot, middle of summer, and it doesn't bother you. You don't get there feeling, you know, completely wrecked. It is definitely a good little drive. But I will say, on the other hand, if you're driving little short trips, you know, it's a good little ute to do, you know, does the job. But there's something about that old HJ, driving it around, you know, it's an absolute beast. You love it. It brings you back, connecting you to actually driving, not letting the vehicle do most of the driving for you. You actually learn to drive it. The young fella, first time he took the cruiser for a spin, crapped himself. He went, Jesus Dad, this thing does not like to drive, you know, straight and narrow like this thing does. The old cruiser's, you know, big wide tyres on it, it feels every groove in the road, it wants to hunt and dive, so you've got to hang on to the bloody thing and drive it. It's fine on a dirt road, flying around, but, you know, it's just a more engaging drive of a vehicle, that old cruiser. These here, not to say these are bland and plain, you know, you've got enough stuff in here to keep you occupied and not get too bored with it. And but it's that sense of feeling when you jump out of one of these, you know, it's a good accomplished machine that they built. You jump out of the old HJ and you feel young again, because, you know, it's so engaging. It drags out all your senses to make sure you're doing everything right on it. This thing here, one finger on the steering wheel driving up the road, you know, doesn't bother you. It's a good drive. But there's something about that cruiser. I love that cruiser. And they've come a long way in building four-wheel drives. And mind you, this is only a Mahindra. It's not a $80,000 trimmed up Hilux or Ranger or anything else like that. So, you know, it hasn't got the power of any of them. It was never meant to have the power of any of them. You know, you bring power into it and you start using fuel. Simple as that. You can't have one without the other too much. And these things here get over 1,000k to the tank, driven properly, of course. You drive like an idiot, and of course you won't get that. But they're a bloody good little ute. I love these things. Now, the first thing you notice is obviously these things here are way more refined on the interior. It's got everything modern cars have. It's very comfortable to drive, very quiet to drive, very refined inside, and good to sit in this bloody 40 odd degree heat, sitting going to work. This old girl, on the other hand, is loud as anything. It's hot as anything. It's as rough as anything, but I love it. And no air conditioning, no power steering. So you've just got to have the windows down and sweat your bum off. But yeah, no big mod cons in these. We did put an aftermarket stereo and stuff in it, and a dash up here for the young fella, and, you know, a few extra switches and gauges for the lights, and keep an eye on that engine, make sure it's all running good. But yeah, suspension, leaf springs all the way around him. Leaf springs on the back of this old girl. Nothing wrong with leaf springs. They're meant to carry stuff, and they do really well. Leaf springs on the front of this old girl for its age. All swivel hubs, and compared to all the IFS front end in these things lift wheels like you wouldn't believe. Good little bit of suspension trouble you get out of these old girls. We did change the diff over in that, put a limited slip diff in it, trying to help it out, give it a bit more push compared to that open wheeler diff idea. Diff lock in the back of the Mahindra. What else is there? Engine wise is probably the biggest change we've had in our technology over these years. Was a 3.6 black motor, changed it up to the 2H 4 litre. Doesn't develop a lot more horsepower than the old thing that come out of it, to tell you the truth. But you know, these things weren't meant to have a lot of horsepower. These things will just keep going all day, every day, and not worry. They'll just keep running and running. These engines were built for longevity. Hopefully this thing's the same. Little 2.2 M-Hawk engine in them. Doesn't develop a great deal of horsepower out of them, but everything that they've got in them, it uses the horsepower really well. These things are geared pretty good through the 6-speed manual. No autos here in Australia yet, but they're geared very well for what horsepower it has. It pulls all right, you know, it does all right down the road. These things are slow, 4-speed gearbox in this old girl, 100k an hour, and you're wearing earmuffs with it. It's deafening, loud, and hot. But these things here will sit on 100k an hour all day, every day. Won't kill them, won't worry them. So there is one thing that I will say about these Mahindras. Everyone says, oh, you love them, you got no faults with them. There are faults with it, and you know, some are little, some are major. But you know, for instance, the little ones, cup holders aren't big enough, need more bloody storage space in them, if you ask me. Doors are very close to your arm. These switches are too far back. It would have been good if they were up here somewhere easy to reach, instead of being back like this trying to reach them. Just little things like that. But the major one that I don't like is how a modern day 4-wheel drive here in Australia can only be 2.5 to 3-star safety rating, an ANCAP safety rating. That comes back to Mahindra and also the Australian government allowing manufacturers to bring vehicles into this country that aren't 5-star safety rated. In my very own personal opinion, these things should have been made 5-star safety rating before let into the country, along with a lot of other manufacturers that do that. Some have actually picked their game up. Mahindra, please make these things 5-star safety rated, and you'll get a hell of a lot more credibility here in Australia and a lot more work for these things if you make them comply with those rules. But yeah, apart from that, they're a good ute. So there we go. Which one would you have? Would you take the Mahindra? Would you take the Cruiser? Everyday driving, especially to work, stuff like that, you've got to take the Mahindra. Horses for courses. This thing's great, this thing's awesome, this thing's fantastic, bloody awesome, but I wouldn't drive it every day, especially out to work. It's just too far to travel. You're getting there, it's just too slow at 80k an hour everywhere, sort of thing. And yeah, just you turn up to work, you feel stuffed driving that distance in these things. These things are a hell of a lot more comfortable, more refined. They'll do it easily, and not only that, you're using way less fuel driving this thing than that old girl. These old Cruisers were, you know, they're relatively heavy, not a lot of horsepower, and they drink the juice. So anyway, what do you guys reckon? You guys, would you take that or that? There is one way of figuring out which is a better vehicle. Ah, it's the old dog. Dozer dog, come here. Come here, Dozer. Well, you've already made up your mind. You want that one compared to that one, hey? You know which one you want, don't you, mate? Good boy, good boy. Ow, ow, you're biting me again. Yep, thank you. You like the old Cruiser, don't you, mate? Well, the scratches you're putting up the side of it. Thank Christ it's wrapped a coat, you twit. Look at him, he's ready to go. Dog knows best. See yous.